What's up guys, it's Amanda. Welcome back to my channel and happy Artsy Fartsy Friday. Today we are going to be talking about comparison. This is a very broad topic and it was actually one that was recommended by Barry on my last video, so thank you so much Barry for recommending this topic. I'm really excited to talk about it, but before I get into the topic of comparison, I wanted to just briefly mention what I'm doing on the screen. I am coloring the November Copic colors illustration that I did for this month. November's Copic colors were E37, R37, and G99. Very kind of fall, autumnal, warm, deep colors. Very pretty, they worked really well together, but I won't really be talking a lot about the drawing in this illustration, so hopefully you just enjoy it as some beautiful background imagery. I also wanted to just quickly shout out and say a big thank you to everyone who pre-ordered the Zodiac calendar. Pre-orders are now closed and all pre-order calendars have been shipped out. If you missed the opportunity to buy a calendar during pre-order, fear not, you can still purchase a calendar. Just the exclusive print and stickers will no longer be available. The link to my online store where you can purchase a calendar will be down below and at the end of the video. So let's talk about comparison. Specifically when talking about comparison in an artistic sense or in the art community, there's something that comes up for me, and it's a quote that really cannot be separated from the word comparison itself. And the quote that jumps to mind is, "Comparison is the thief of joy." I'm sure you've heard it all before, and maybe some of you are even rolling your eyes at me mentioning it here because maybe you've watched other comparison topic videos that have talked about this subject. What I want to welcome into the conversation here is the idea that that's not always the case, and that the idea that comparison is the thief of joy is such an absolute statement that can in no way apply to every situation. So what I want to invite is an equally as absolute idea that still may not apply to every case, but may just challenge that belief that you have about comparison and sort of the negative connotation that goes along with that quote. And that is, the absence of comparison is the absence of progress. Now, I would invite you just to let those words sink in for a minute and just to reflect on how they make you feel. I want you to do this because for me, a lot of emotions come up when I think of the quote, "Comparison is the thief of joy." There's a lot of negative feelings, maybe some guilt in kind of owning that statement of, I am responsible for how I feel when I compare myself to others. And it does sort of make me feel bad and a little bit guilty and maybe a little bit naive when I think of how I am making myself feel bad by comparing myself to others. And as I sort of thought about that quote more and more, I started thinking about who I would be if I didn't compare myself to others. And while it's hard to know for sure, I have a pretty hard time imagining being on this platform making this video right now if I had never compared myself to someone else. Specifically to someone who I believed was better than me in some way, shape, or form. Either they were a better artist, or they were a better content creator, they were a better speaker, they were a better business person. In some way, I have looked at others that I believed were better than me and maybe felt a little bit defeated for a while, but also felt inspired enough to change. So it's really not the comparison that is the thief of joy, but rather the emotion that follows that comparison, and it can go one of two ways. There's a fork in the road at the end of that quote, and in one direction there's defeat and there's failure and there's low self-esteem and there's giving up when you compare yourself to others. Maybe comparing yourself to somebody who is your same age and uses your same tools and likes the same things that you do, but is so much better than you. And you feel like you're never going to catch up and you're never going to be good enough, so why not give up? In that example, the act of comparing yourself to that person is stealing your joy, and it is stealing your motivation. But that's not the fault of the comparison. Comparison is natural. It's to be expected. It's how we gauge what is normal, and it's how we make sense of our lives and the world around us. I could argue for how comparison is an evolutionary necessity in some way in terms of psychology and survival and society, but I'm not here to do that in this video. I am just here to challenge your belief of what comparison can be. Now, I'm sure many of us watching this video right now have some interest in art, and if you're my same age demographic, you grew up in a time where art was so easily accessible to digest via the internet. As a millennial growing up in the digital age, I was exposed to so many talented people constantly on the internet. And many times it felt like I was never going to be good enough to compete with these people, because they were people who had the same access to all of this inspiration that I did, but were doing so much more with it. And I truly felt like I knew something that they didn't, and that I was missing out on this big idea that was like this secret everybody knew about but me. But really that wasn't the case. And as I sort of grew older and compared myself to more and more people, I started realizing that sometimes I was comparing myself to people and putting myself at a pretty significant disadvantage. Comparing myself to somebody who maybe is my same age but has twice the experience that I do, or has been practicing for 3 times as long. Of course they're going to be better than me. Should I feel defeated that they're better than me, or should I feel inspired? Should I feel motivated to adopt some of those same skills into my own life and into my own work and try and improve? Maybe I'm comparing myself to somebody who is twice my age and has been at it for just as long as I have, but is somehow better, because their worldly experience has granted them the knowledge that I don't yet have, or an understanding of the human body or form or light or shadow that I just haven't developed yet. Should I fault myself for that? No. But in the act of comparing myself to them, I can recognize the areas that I need to grow in, and the skills and the foundational areas that I need to go back to and practice. So in that regard, comparing myself to others was how I got where I am today. Sure, it wasn't always a positive, feel-good experience, but it undoubtedly contributed to the success that I have now. And please note, the amount of success that I believe I have is very, very small, and I don't think that there's a lot of you that would disagree with that statement. But maybe there are some younger viewers out there, or somebody who is just getting into the art world and discovering this online community of artists, who looks at what I have and thinks they want that for themselves. I can completely relate to that. While I don't feel like my success is that great, it certainly is significant compared to what I had when I started, which, spoiler alert, was nothing. And I remember how it felt being 12 or 13 online and looking at somebody who was writing their own comic or illustrating their own book. It felt so surreal, and it felt like that was just a goal I would never be able to achieve or surpass. Because my understanding of it at the time was that I can't even draw 2 eyes that look the same. How could I possibly illustrate a comic book? How could I possibly illustrate a book or create an animation? I made a video a couple years back talking about there's room for everybody at the finish line because it's only your finish line, or something to the effect of like everyone's journey is their own and you're not really in a race with anyone else around you. I stand by it as being a pretty decent video, and maybe I can revamp it in this sort of art chat series. But the thing is, if you're going to compare yourself to anyone, compare yourself to you first. Where were you a year ago compared to where you are now? Have you seen progress? For some of you, that answer might be no. And instead of feeling like a failure, like, wow, I haven't gone anywhere, done anything in that time span, I would invite you to pause and objectively and curiously ask yourself why you think that is. Take your emotions out of it, take your self-deprecating humor out of it, and just seriously reflect on why that might be. Maybe you've been a full-time student and haven't had the time to devote to this craft. Maybe you've been working or have been honing another skill that you also equally care about. That's a pretty good excuse for not improving at something. And I think it's okay to tell yourself, I didn't progress in this one area, and that's okay. I think that's okay. I've been very forgiving with myself over the last year because I have been in a master's program. And to be fair, my priorities these days aren't necessarily working on my anatomy and foreshortening. Rather, it's about surviving my master's program and crossing the finish line at graduation and then getting a job so that I can do this hobby without the financial stress of being a student. I can look at another artist who maybe a year ago was at my same skill level and see that they've improved more than I have, and know that the reason for that is not because I'm a failure or I suck at this. It's because they were putting in the time and effort to improve that specific skill. And that if I had done the same, I would likely be seeing equal amounts of progress in some way. So that's an example of comparing myself to someone without necessarily having to feel bad about it, to feel bad about the fact that I haven't improved. And I would invite you to do this with artists that you follow online. So I'm going to talk you through an exercise, and if you guys do this, please comment down below sort of what your experience was like. Picture your favorite artist on Instagram, or Twitter, or Tumblr, or wherever you consume social media. Picture an artist that you have supported for a while, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, maybe even a couple of years. And think about why you continue to support them, why you continue to double tap their pictures. What is it about their work that makes you feel strongly enough to respond to it? We are exposed to constant stimulation in media. So when something makes you pause enough to like something or comment on something, even if it just takes a millisecond of your time, that's significant. Because there's so much in our lives that we just ignore and pass by, and we don't even take the time to process it. So when you see an artist's work and you pause and you stop and you like it, what is it about their work that is making you feel that way? Maybe it's their color choice, their composition, their character design. Maybe it's the artist themselves. Maybe you really love that artist's personality and humor and how they incorporate that into their work. And now look at your own work, and in the same objective and curious way, try and find similarities between you and this artist you admire. Maybe you also have similar color choice or similar humor that you feel like you relate to this artist. If you're having difficulty finding similarities, that's okay. This is sort of a skill you are going to have to practice. But then think about ways that you can maybe start incorporating those qualities into your own work. Maybe this artist does something that you really like. Maybe it's the way they take pictures. Maybe it's the way they run their business. How can you adapt that skill to fit your art, to fit your style, to fit your business? How can you take this thing that you admire about somebody else and make it work for you? That is how you make comparison work for you. That is how you ensure that comparison never takes anything from you that you don't want it to. Comparison should not be responsible for your happiness. You should be able to self-reflect and look at the world and look at yourself and know that you are perfect just the way that you are right now, but that you can always improve. And even though those are two very conflicting ideas, they can coexist. So it's something to really think about, that if you let it, comparison will make you miserable. But at the same time, if you let it, comparison can make you successful. So that's how I feel about comparison. It's a very loaded topic that I'm sure I could continue to address in future videos. And if you want me to, I would be more than happy to do that. But for today, I think I'm going to let you guys off easy. Thank you again, Barry, for recommending this topic. I really had a lot of fun reflecting on it, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this video as well. If you have other art-related topics that you would like to hear me talk about, please let me know in a comment down below, and I will continue to do these art chat-related videos in the future. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I'm not sure how I feel about this illustration at the end of it all. There's a couple of things that I know I need to work on in my art. One is just the values and the lights and the darks in my illustrations are just so off. This image looks very flat. It looks unfinished in a way, but I really liked the colors, so I wanted to do an illustration with them. So I'm not going to be selling the original or prints of this particular piece. However, if you are interested, you can head over to my Patreon, and for a minimum of a $1 pledge, you can get a line art download, and you can color it yourself. You can use the Copic colors, you can use any colors that you want, any medium you want. You can just print it yourself and download it, and you can color it as many times as you want. Again, that's over on my Patreon, which is also linked down below. Again, thank you to everyone who ordered a calendar. I so appreciate you guys, and I will see you on the internet. Bye, guys.